Sir Peter Hall, born on the 19th of March 1932 in Hampstead, London, son of Bertha and Arthur, moved with his family in 1940 to Blackpool, where his father worked as a clerical officer in the Pensions Service. Hall completed his schooling at Blackpool Grammar School and continued on to graduate from St Catherine's, Cambridge, with a master's and doctorate in geography. In Hall's personal life, he was married to Carla Wartenberg between the years 1962 to 1966. He then married Magdalena Mroz in 1967 until his death on the 30th of July 2014. Hall was an academic who had a great impact on urban design throughout the 20th and 21st century. As stated in his obituary by Locke, a fellow activist of Hall's at the Town and Country Planning Association, the main concern of the geographer and the town planner, Sir Peter Hall, was the growth and change of cities. Hall was noted as being Britain's leading expert within the field of town planning. He worked as a Professor of Planning and Regeneration at the Bartlett University College London, as well as being President of the Town and Country Planning Association. Hall was directly involved with public policy through his work as a special advisor on the strategic planning between the years of 1991 and 1994 to the Environment Secretary Michael Heseltine. Hall had a great impact on city planning in the United Kingdom and was knighted in 1998 with the Queen noting him as a pioneer in the life of the nation. One of Hall's major achievements that can still be seen in today's cities is his development of the Enterprise Zone, notably in London with Canary Wharf. There are many opinions on these zones, and after looking at them closely and diving deeper into a great deal of analysis, it is believed that they do not actually work in the way they were initially planned to work. Although they were designed to recreate the Hong Kong of the 1950s and 60s inside inner Liverpool or inner Glasgow, as quoted in his obituary, helping stimulate investment and growth, offering new business reductions on rates and taxes, enticing development and the creation of jobs to poorer areas of the city. Ultimately, these zones should have brought work to the people and aided in boosting the economy. However, through time, this has not appeared to be the case. Low or reduced taxes are only offered over a limited period of time, which means the zone needs to create a competitive work environment in order to sustain itself when taxes are again raised. Many enterprise zones have experienced a great boom in investment and employment in the initial years, but have seen this decrease over time as they fail to maintain themselves. Often jobs in the zones do not go to the people living in the zone, creating more employment for the city, but in actual fact just making a worse environment for the locals to live in. In a study conducted in 2011 by Andrew Sisson and Chris Brown, it was noted that 80% of jobs in the enterprise zones are taken from other areas and not by the locals. Enterprise zones create huge costs for the government and do not appear to make the situation within these poorer areas better. They're instead acting like very expensive band-aids with not a whole heap of stick. If we break the enterprise zone down into different elements and look at how these do benefit the locals and how they don't, it is quite clear that the concept could work, but only with careful and well-educated planning. The people living in the communities need to be considered. The humanity of the area is paramount. Looking deeper into Hall's opinions and theories, it is clear to see that he did have clear, well-thought-out humane concepts. In his work, Global Urban Development from 2007, he discusses ways in which to blur the lines between the rich and the poor and how to make the slums neighbourhoods that are good to live in, enabling poorer citizens to join the mainstream economy and society.
Mumbai is one of the world's mega cities, racing into the future and building up into the sky. Property here is among the most expensive in the world. This 27-story skyscraper will be the private home for just one family, and it's costing $2 billion to build. And yet, sitting right in the middle of this modern metropolis is the patchwork of shanties that is Dharavi. Nearly 1 million people are crammed into just 1 square mile.
To give you an idea, this is a small residential block in Fitzroy, Melbourne, and the highlighted area would be the equivalent of having 600 to 2,000 people living in it if this was Dharavi. It's hard to comprehend how people live in these conditions and have done for more than 100 years. McLeod visits Dharavi in an attempt to better understand the concept that Dhabi can help architects and planners solve some of the problems facing our cities. Dharavi is home to a multi-million-dollar untaxed manufacturing industry, selling everything from leather goods, pottery, breads and luggage. Amongst the squalor, rats, sanitation and drainage problems, there are more than 15,000 one-room factories employing the majority of Dharavi's people.
An international aid organisation coming here, you just look at the squalor and the piles of rubbish and the broken paving, and you think, no, this is all going to change, this is awful. It's chaotic as you would expect it to be, but it's also magical, this place. The residents, though, are fearful all this could disappear with the redevelopment plan. You could dream up an ideal place for a community to live in, then pretty well most of what you would hope for. Being able to walk everywhere, minimal car use, wonderful old buildings here and there. Great sense of community, public space, market that you can walk to. These things most people dream of, and an open-air restaurant. Shops on every corner, being able to find everything you want within 5 minutes of leaving your home. And living in a community of people who've lived there for 50 or 100 years, generations have been here. Those things together have to constitute the components of a civilized life, really.
As Mumbai struggles to find space, Dharavi's land has become worth billions to developers. A small 27 square metre apartment here is priced at approximately $170,000. This makes redeveloping the slums of Mumbai very appealing. These shiny new additions would provide a captivating landscape. Of the 1 million slum dwellers of Dharavi, a percentage would be housed here.
In Mumbai, the city of dreams, the government is desperate to rid itself of slums, but it appears it just hasn't thought about the thousands of people who'll be displaced.
The displacement of people when redevelopment happens will inevitably create poverty at another locale. Mike Davis, born in 1946, was raised in San Diego, California. Graduating with a BA and MA in history from UCLA, he is now a professor of creative writing at UCR. He is a successful published author with a strong political background in social justice. His ability to engage the reader has not gone unnoticed, with Davis winning a number of awards. Perhaps the most esteemed was the MacArthur Fellowship or the Genius Grant. This grant is awarded to a person showing originality, insight and potential, and it allowed Davis and his family to holiday in Africa and Asia. And also, Davis was able to write uninterrupted for the first time in his life. Although Davis has a number of critics willing to openly question some of the resources and information Davis has included in his books, it cannot go unnoticed that the topic of which he writes is engaging and thought-provoking. In my opinion, there are two defining moments influential in Davis's life, of which he shares with Bill Moyers on the Journal.
I mean, the saddest thing in remember with my own dad, who was a meat and potatoes 30s trade unionist, loved Roosevelt. And he's a guy who grew up in the early 20th century believing in American history. Every time the American people struggled and won a new right, okay, that became then a foundation for the other struggle, and that was irreversible. And he saw in the Reagan years, history going in reverse. His union pension fund went bankrupt. The particular industry he worked in basically became defunct, and it was harrowing to me to see my father, who was the most patriotic guy I ever knew, as it struck him that we're always continually fighting for principles and rights, and they can be taken away. History, can go in reverse.
Why did you become a radical? What made you so radical?
Well, in my case, there really was a burning a bush, and that was the civil rights movement in San Diego, where I grew up in the 50s and 60s. And when I was 16 years old, my father had a heart attack, and I had to leave school for a while to work. And I'm the black side of my family by marriage. They got me to come to a demonstration, Congress of Racial Equality, in front of the Bank of America in downtown San Diego. And it literally transformed my life, just the sheer beauty of it and the sheer righteousness of it. And I won't claim that every decision or political stance or political group I joined as a result of the civil rights movement was the right one, but it permanently shaped my life.
I pulled something off the web that you wrote recently. You said, "I believe great opportunities lie ahead for the rebels of the world to swell our ranks and take the fight forward. A new generation of young people is discovering that their political engagement counts." Now, where are you seeing that?
Well, that the only possibility of getting this country out of the crisis, the only possibility that really deep-set reforms can occur, including the protection and renewal of the productive base of the economy, is labor has to become more powerful. We need more protests. We need more noise in the street for that. It's a straightforward enough proposition to say, hey, if we're going to own the banking system, why not make the decisions and make them in lines with social policy that ensures that housing is affordable, that school loans are affordable, that small business gets credit? Why not turn the banking system into a public utility? Now, that doesn't have to be in any sense an anti-capitalist demand, but it's a radical demand that asks fundamental question about the institution and who holds economic power. Why isn't the federal government not taking a more direct role in decision making?
A city planner pioneering the concept that the community needs to be involved in the planning of its spaces is Amanda Burden. Holding a Master of Science in Urban Planning, and as New York City's Planning Commissioner for 11 years, Burden was determined to make a difference. After years of walking the streets and by understanding the needs of the community, she successfully created open public spaces which blurred the division between dilapidated, unused spaces and the chic city fringe.
People came from all over the city to be in these parks. I know they changed the lives of the people who lived there, but they also changed New Yorkers' whole image of their city. I often come down and watch people get on this little ferry that now runs between the boroughs. And I can't tell you why, but I'm completely moved by the fact that people are using it as if it had always been there.
Another element Hall suggests is important in bridging the gap between the rich and the poor in our cities is affordable and well-structured public transport. Public transport can perhaps be seen as the veins of the city. We often just look towards roads for this. However, in all cities, we need affordable, good flowing public transport that enables the poorer citizens who do not own cars to get to decent, well-paid jobs in the heart of the city. Not only do we need public transport for these reasons, it is a vital part of our future in regards to overcrowding in cities and the state of our environment. However, these topics are better suited for a later and more in-depth research. Hall looks at the issue of public transport in regards to London and the Underground, most of which he states was built in 1907, when London was pulling itself out of a large era of growth in the surrounding slums. The city saw the poor crowding in on its outskirts, unable to afford housing within, but needing to live within close proximity to the city to get to work or to search for work. Affordable public transport enabled this. Hall compares London to many poorer, larger cities such as Sao Paulo, in which citizens actually struggle much more to get to work within the city due to the poorly designed and expensive public transport system. If we bring this concept of public transport back home to Australia, how do we compare? Yes, we don't really have slums in Australia, but we do still have similar concepts and borders between the rich and the poor. Where they may not be extreme, it is still not an even playing ground. Looking at the Bureau of Statistics in regards to public transport use within our cities, it is very interesting to see that a large number of reasons noted for people's choices to not use it comes down to not having it available at a convenient time and losing a sense of convenience within the form of public transportation, losing conveniences such as it actually getting you to your place of work on time. When we look at the number of people using private motor vehicles as their main form of transportation in comparison to those using public or other forms such as walking or riding bicycles, it is clear that there is a huge gap in these numbers. So where do these people fall that are not at a level of income to own a personal vehicle? Stuck with the inconvenient, untrustworthy, and inaccessible options that are public, hence being pushed out of the city and jobs available in these areas. If the public transport systems were more affordable and convenient, the poorer citizens living in the outskirts of the cities would have the concept of an increased chance of working in well-paid jobs within the cities becoming a reality. The idea of public transport leads us down many paths, such as the possibility for young students from poorer backgrounds having more affordable accessibility to higher education found in the cities, leading to better education and more opportunities in the work field.
Davis and Hall, and most probably every urban theorist, political student, or humanitarian at some point has had a theory on how to design for the future, best grow the economy, or save the world. The differing views politically, religiously, and economically cannot, by definition, be autonomized. Hall's idea for an enterprise zone failed in short because corporations saw the opportunity for monetary gain. A similar problem arises with Davis's idea that the government can administer the wealth of the people equally. Inherently, both these ideals failed because the target audience was not the resultant one. Canary Wharf was rescued from financial ruin from outside investors, and Dharavi is ruled to rehouse only a percentage of its inhabitants. If Dharavi has been inhabited since 1882 and still in existence today, it is fair and reasonable to assume that it is succeeding. To redevelop it without considering the humanitarian issues is to deliberately create conditions of difficulty for those displaced or forced to change lifestyles. It is easy to see it as a mesh of recycled, corrugated tin shanties. It is much harder to see it as a human heart beating and fighting for existence. It is this humanity that needs to be nurtured and encouraged and perhaps even revered as we work towards creating a sustainable environment for future generations. Is the question, how do we blur the division between rich and poor? Or is the question, why do we still have a division between the rich and poor in our cities? In my opinion, Amanda Burden sums it up nicely. She says, you don't tap into your design expertise, you tap into humanity.
Are we caged in by our cities? Do our governments in fact control our freedom? Can we remove ourselves from the class that we are in, and can the designs of our cities actually enhance this and make this possible? If we leave it in the hands of the government, will we move forwards, or will we continue to move in the same repetitive cycle as we have for many years? One where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Can we design cities that actually bridge these gaps? If we leave this up to our governments, no matter how social they may or may not be, will anything ever change? Does it not seem smarter to put educated urban planners in these roles? Does it not perhaps seem smarter to take our designs to the streets and ask the people what they need, what they miss, what would make them happy? Where does the answer lie in bridging the gap between the rich and the poor? Can we and should we remove this from the grips of our governments, who may not have our best interests at heart, and perhaps put our bricks in the hands of those with the knowledge and expertise to guide and work with the people in order to smudge the lines?